Welcome back to the Andrew Ramon Show. In this episode, we're going to be answering the question, is it loving to affirm someone's pronouns? I mean, after all, if you're a Christian, you're supposed to love your neighbor, right? Wouldn't it be unloving and even harmful not to acknowledge and support the self-proclaimed identity of an individual? I mean, what's the big deal? It's just pronouns, right? Well, let's get into it. Well, welcome back, guys, to another episode of the Andrew Ramon Show. It has been a minute. If you're jumping in, this is your first time you listen to it, then great. But if you've been a follower of this show for more than 2.5 years, you know that usually we do an episode every single week, and then right around March, all of a sudden there was nothing. It was like the submarine went dark completely. And there are several reasons for that. Number one is I got sick, and number two, just got different projects. But if you really want to know what I've been up to the last several months, it has not been a hiatus. I'll tell you that, sadly. I wish I had that much rest. It's actually been another project called the Counter Current Podcast. And in Spanish, Contra Corriente Podcast. It is an amazing podcast that I started with my brothers. It is a longer format and also more conversational, more laid back that I know you're going to enjoy. So you can actually Google right now. I'm going to put the links in the description below so you can listen to it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and even watch it on YouTube. Follow the page, of course. The page is actually in Spanish, but we put all the content, both English and Spanish, into it. And it's just Contra Corriente, or you can even look us up as Counter Culture Podcast, and it should pop up there. So it's been a lot of fun, but I hope you've had a great summer. This episode is going to be crucial, especially if you're going back to school. So listen up, whether you're a teenager going back to school, going back to university, or really you're someone that's out of school, but just faces the real world from Monday all the way back to Monday again, this episode is going to be crucial. Because just like we said at the beginning, we're going to be answering the question, is it loving to affirm someone's chosen identity, like pronouns? Pronouns are very controversial in many circles. You know, Instagram accepts them. You pull up, you create an account, and they say, choose your pronouns, and you have really unlimited sections. Facebook has it as well. It seems like more and more companies, more social media platforms are letting you put your pronouns in your bios, especially. But it's not something that's just stuck to the social media platform. It's actually in real life. In real life, you might have seen it in videos, or you might have encountered it yourself, seeing someone that's he or she, or he, him, or she, her, or even him, he, his, I think it's another one. They, them, of course, theirs, them, and there's just a lot of them. Now, it really, I think, can depend where you are in the United States or in the world, but let's just limit it to the US right now, whether you encounter that often. You know, I'm in Dallas, so sometimes you might encounter that if you go to a more if you a quote unquote liberal part of the city. If you're probably somewhere that's extremely ultra conservative, you're not going to come in contact with them. However, it is a question that we should all know how to answer. Is it loving to affirm someone's self-identity? And look, I get this. This is a controversial question, but if you know anything about the Andrew Ramon Show, is that we don't back down from controversial topics because we want to approach them biblically. I'm not here to offer one more opinion out of the many that you can find on social media and on YouTube. My hope is to try to approach this biblically because it's an important question. It's an important question because although it might sound simple, it deserves a thoughtful response because too many times these conversations can be set aside as quote unquote political, so we don't want to engage in them. Or one side will be just deemed too conservative or fundamentalist or closed-minded, so we don't want to engage in that conversation. Or on the other side, if you will, the left side of the political aisle, we might just call them snowflakes or far right or far left, whatever it might be. And usually we use labels to try to avoid conversation, right? Because if someone's crazy, then why do you even have to address it, right? It's just crazy. Although I personally think that it's nonsensical to try to change your pronouns to something that you quote unquote feel more at home with, I don't want to just push it aside and say it's nonsensical, it's crazy, let's move on, because this is a real topic for many people. So my hope is to carefully and thoughtfully try to answer this biblically. So I got a lot of notes for this one because I want to make sure that we do this carefully and we don't just set it aside. Now, one of the best things to do whenever you're trying to understand the other side is, actually understand the other side. Because too many times we speak out of ignorance. And first one, hands up, I've spoken out of ignorance before. In fact, I speak a lot, and chances are I'm speaking out of ignorance. But that's why I like to be very careful. I like to study a lot. I like to read a lot. By the way, there's a great book that I've been reading. I took a course that is based on the book already, but there's a great book called Holy Sexuality by Christopher Yuan. We're going to make a whole episode on it. I can't wait to tell you about it. It's going to be great. But one of the problems in our generation is that we've settled with what I call surface level thinking, meaning we only want to see the ice cap, right? We don't really want to learn the entire argument, so we stick with thumbnails, we stick with titles, we stick with tweets, but nothing more that has content to it. So we tend to misrepresent ideas. And one of the worst things that we can do whenever we're trying to debate an idea is to, first of all, misrepresent that idea, because then we're setting up a straw man and we're not being effective in that. So I'm going to explain to you the way I understand the idea behind choosing someone's pronouns. I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, tell me in the chat, and I'm totally willing to learn. But I kind of wrote down what I could see as the thinking behind someone that says you should affirm someone's pronouns and people should change their pronouns if they want to. So I kind of wrote it down. I'm going to read what I wrote here just to make sure I get it right. And again, if you do think this way, then let me know if I kind of understood the gist of it. And if you don't think this way, hopefully this will help you understand this more clearly. So the way I think that someone would approach this topic, if you're in agreement with it, would be something like this. First, that gender identity is a personal expression of your true self. And since it's personal, you're the only one who truly knows who you are. So if you identify, and by identify, I mean you feel at home with, you feel like it fits like a glove, per se. Is that an actual saying in English? Or fits like a suit, maybe? I don't know. One of those two is a saying in English, and one of them is a saying in Spanish. So if it feels like it fits with, let's just say, the pronouns, if you are a biological male, which, again, I'm not addressing the transgender issue right now, but if you're a biological male and you feel at home with the he, him pronouns, meaning biological pronouns, male pronouns, then great. That's awesome. But if your gender, per se, is a little bit what's called a little more nuanced, if your gender expression is a little more nuanced, it doesn't quite fit with he, him, or she, her, you don't quite identify too much as what a boy may look like or a girl may look like, and then your pronouns should reflect that identity of yours, that kind of nuance identity, that place on the spectrum, if you will. Now, again, for context, I'm describing the thought. This is not what I believe, but I'm describing it just to make sure I get it right. So a person, for example, that might go with they, them, or some sort of kind of in-between option. And again, I'm not ridiculing that idea. I'm generally just trying to understand it. Of course, a person, like I said, that might not fit comfortably between the binary boxes, if you will, of he, him, and she, her, then will come up with their own pronouns that genuinely express who they believe they are. And at the end of the day, you're the one who knows who you are, right? So, of course, someone might say, it's a lot more complicated than that, Andrew. It's just, I mean, you can't summarize it like that. But is that what it boils down to? I believe it is, that you are the ultimate authority of deciding who you are. Nobody else. Nobody else. I mean, that would imply, though, and this is what's important to understand, that the feeling of what someone might say gender confusion, according to this thought process, shouldn't even be called gender confusion, because that would imply that a person that's actually lost, when they're not lost, they're in a journey of discovery. Do you see the difference with that? And it's really important that we understand this, because if someone goes, no, someone who's gender confused is confused and they're lost in their identity. Someone who believes that you can choose your own pronouns will say, no, I'm not lost. It's more like searching, right? It's not that you haven't found your home, it's you have to kind of make and create your home, because at the end of the day, you're the only one who knows when you found what you're searching for. Okay, how did I do? Did I get it? I'm pretty sure I did. Again, I know for a fact that if I got it wrong, there's going to be plenty of comments telling me, Andrew, you misrepresented it. Great. But I think, I'm trying to be fair here, I think I got it pretty okay. And if that sounds confusing, that's okay, because that's kind of the point. You see, it's only confusing, we're told, because it's not our gender expression, right? So we wouldn't understand what someone's gender identity and journey might be, because that's the point. It is a personal thing. So we're not expected to understand. So it becomes a circle reasoning that I am this because I think that I am, thus I am. And it's almost a circular reasoning that no one can objectively speak into that, because we're not the individual trying to find our gender identity. So it gets pretty confusing. Now, my concern is to how to approach this as a disciple of Jesus. That's what I'm concerned about. I'm not really concerned too much with the cultural aspect disconnected from Jesus. Now, conservatism is great and it makes a lot of sense, but myself, I'm only a conservative because that's what supports biblical standards and biblical. Now, for some reason, a conservative ideas would totally go anti-biblical, then no, I would not consider myself a conservative. I am a Christian first, and thus, because I'm a Christian, I see the principles that it is, and it plays out conservatively. So that's a little side point there. But my concern is, how do we approach this as Christians? How do I approach this biblically? Not with my own thought, not with what feels comfortable, but with what's actually true. Are we really the ones that hold ultimate authority over our identity? I'll say it again. Are we really the ones that hold ultimate authority over our identity? Does gender really exist on the spectrum? And if it's really just male and female, why is there such confusion, right? If it was so simple as male and female, why is there so much confusion? Are people who identify differently between, let's say, an intermediate, a middle category, are they just making this up out of thin air, or does it have some truth in it? All this has to do with whether you affirm someone's pronouns. I know you thought it was simple, but come on, man. Come on, homie. You know when you hear this podcast, is nothing simple about it, dude. It's a trap. If you thought it was going to be a simple answer, it's not, because right now we're going to dive into a lot of philosophical and biblical meat. So here's how it works. At the end of the day, you can sum up the belief this way, okay? Be very clear about this. There is no design to who we are, thus we design ourselves. That is the fundamental belief about gender ideology as it works culturally right now, and especially in the far left politically. But how it works is this: there is no design to who we are, thus we create the design ourselves. So in a way, you could see it this way. We are both the painter and the canvas, right? There's the canvas and then there's the painter. Well, in this idea is we are both. Our body is our canvas. Our expression is our canvas. We decide who we are because there is no design to who we are in the first place. That is the fundamental belief of gender ideology as it works culturally. Here's the problem. This entire belief of gender, believing that it's in a spectrum, believing that you're the only one who gets to decide who you are and who really knows who you are, that is rooted in what's called naturalism. And it is very, very fragile. This is why we have a lot of Christians accepting the end result of the belief, because the end result doesn't sound so bad, right? I mean, just be loving to someone. What's the big deal with that? Yet the root of it is poisonous. The root of it is very, very fragile, basically a house of cards. And I'm going to explain that to you because, again, I want to help you. I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to help you how to think very clearly. I don't want to tell you what to think. I want to help you how to think. So this is how it works. Naturalism is anti-Christian. I mean, the packaging is very appealing when it comes to this whole belief. I mean, who doesn't want to love people, right? Obviously, as a Christian, we want to love people, yet the content is damaging. The packaging, very appealing. It's got like a little pony, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's a pony, so cute. It's basically a Trojan horse, if you remember that story with the Trojans. Basically, it was a horse that seemed to be a gift, but inside was a dangerous content, which was an army ready to destroy the city from within. That is this ideology. It is a Trojan horse. Looks very pretty on the outside, like, hey, just be loving, you're good to go. But the content can be damaging. And let me explain how that looks like. When Jesus came on earth, now we're going to get, oh man, I cannot wait to tell you this. I've missed this podcast. This is like a little output for me. So bear with me. I've had a lot of thoughts to think about, especially because we went through, we went through Pride Month and everything. So here's the deal. When Jesus came to earth, he came to restore things to its proper order. Mankind was not meant to live in sin, right? It was meant to have a relationship with God that was damaged because why? Because of sin. So the original design, you can say it with me, the original design, I feel like I'm preaching already. The original design is to be in relationship with God, right? And we know the story. Man sinned through disobedience, pride, etc. That design was corrupted. You can say it was broken per se, but there was an original design, yet it was corrupted. Mankind through disobedience, pride, chose to follow itself. Now, to restore something implies that you are restoring something that is broken. So let me explain that a little better. To restore something implies that what you are restoring is broken. And here is a big problem. I cannot express this enough. This is huge. It might sound obvious, like, okay, if you restore something, that means that what you are restoring is broken, thus needing restoration. This makes sense, but here's why this is so huge. Here's the mistake our culture does. What the Bible calls broken, the world calls perfect. I'm going to say it again. What the Bible calls broken, the world calls perfect. You see, Jesus would be canceled right now in our culture. Why? Because he called things sinful that our culture believes is normal, adequate, and in fact, naturally perfect. This is huge because Jesus' whole mission was to restore things to their proper order. Cast out demons to restore why? A sound mind. Demon possession is not the natural divine order. It is a sound mind that God has given you. Yet, when demons get in the way of that, Jesus said, hey, demons, get out because I'm restoring proper order, thus a sound mind. He went to heal sicknesses. Why? Because he was restoring proper health. What else did he do? He preached the kingdom of God to restore sinners to their proper relationship with their God. Man, I hope you're getting this. Jesus came to a broken world to bring restoration to a proper order, to a sound mind because chaos is not the proper order, to healing because sickness is not the proper order, to salvation and relationship with God because sinful and separation from God is not the proper order. Does that make sense so far? So his mission, Jesus' mission, would be so offensive to our culture today because in our culture, no one is really bad. People are mainly just misunderstood. Do you catch that? Our culture doesn't really call people bad. I mean, try to make villains and heroes out of stories. But when it comes to someone who, let's just say, you'd say, well, what about this? This happened a while back. Whenever there was part in the news when I think the MS-13 gang members, which they're practically animals, because they're horrendous people. And actually, you're seeing this in El Salvador. I'm pretty sure it is El Salvador has a new president. He's completely changing the incarceration laws because what was going on is you had gang members that even though they were being locked up, they basically owned the prison so much because they had prostitutes over, they could communicate to the outside world, they actually did all their dealings with the outside world, even though they were in prison, and it was just a hellhole that El Salvador at that moment. Yet this new president came and he completely changed everything, started to treat the criminals like criminals. So if you were part of the gang just by having an association of a tattoo, which the reason you have that tattoo is because you've done something bad to be part of the gang, automatically 20 years. You're done. No questions asked. 20 years. And then you have some people coming up and going, wait, what if it's not, that gang member's not really bad? What if he's just kind of misunderstood? What if he accidentally tattooed himself that? What? Like, are you kidding me? First of all, you accidentally tattoo yourself that and you're not part of the gang, you're dead because the gang kills you. That's how serious it is. But do you see that? There was a reporter who literally was asking that, well, what if it's just kind of an accident? Because here's the thing, our world doesn't want to call bad or evil what it is. It wants to call bad mostly misunderstood. So as an example, the demon-possessed man that would live by the graveyard that Jesus went to completely set him free, you know what culture would label him as? Culture would label him not as demon-possessed, but as misunderstood by society. And in fact, a victim of society. And you know what they would do? Would they really help him? Not so much. They would just maybe put a vending machine close to him with sanitized razor blades for him to cut himself in a sanitized way. Did you catch what I'm doing there? That's what's going on in San Francisco. That's what this administration is doing. Instead of really dealing with the drug problem, it's more like, let's give them clean needles. Doesn't fix the problem, but at least makes us look good, doesn't it? That's what a culture wants to do. No, you see, it's not an addiction. It's not really a problem. They're misunderstood by society. That's what the culture would say with that demon-possessed man. Jesus, wait a minute. Jesus, setting him free is assuming that he's actually in a bad place. Or Jesus, are you really saying that you can't be that offensive? That's offensive. That's offensive. I don't know. Is that a meme? I'm pretty sure that's a meme. So here's the thing. That's not the only case. For example, the woman caught in adultery. Culture wouldn't restore her true identity and even her dignity. You know what culture would do? Throw her like a little safe sex package with some condoms or something. Say, hey, next time you have sex, just practice safe sex and that's it. But this poor woman has had her dignity and her identity stolen by reckless men, yet culture doesn't really care about that. They want to do what's called virtue signal, but not actually solve the problem because, hey, no one's really bad, right? Everyone's really misunderstood. No one actually messes up in their lives. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? Is this experience of, for example, the woman caught in adultery or the demon-possessed man, we can see that in culture. We don't want to solve our culture, our world. Our government doesn't want to solve problems. They want to pretend the problems don't exist by just renaming them something, right? So it's not a drug epidemic. It's mostly like, hey, we just want to help them. So I think they even changed names by like homeless. They don't call them like homeless anymore. They changed it. So instead of actually helping them in their needs, it's more like, let's just help them. Let's just virtue signal and see if it does anything. What does all of this have to do with pronouns, you might ask? Because here's the thing. We all experience the consequences of a broken world. But because the worldview of this culture cannot accept the concept of sin, which causes brokenness in itself, it's left with two options. How does the world react to brokenness? Because they can't accept sin, which sin causes brokenness. So how do they categorize brokenness? They see it two ways. Number one, pretend that the brokenness is not actually brokenness, that is being labeled brokenness by, for example, traditional Christians. So, as something that I would say someone who struggles with their sexual identity and considers themselves gay or acts upon same-sex attraction or transgenderism, I would consider that a broken identity that Jesus can restore. So culture would say, well, hold up, it's not broken, you're calling it broken, but it's not actually broken. So that's option one, is that they will pretend that brokenness is not brokenness and it's just labeled brokenness by some conservative Christians. Option two is in fact accept the brokenness as part of the journey of merely being human and offer short-lasting band-aids. Thus, we see that with drug problems. We see that with homelessness. So we see it's like any brokenness in our lives, it's either dismissed and no longer seen as brokenness, but in fact just part of who we are and it's something to be celebrated, or it's accepted and never changed and it's just part of being human. That's it. So all this brokenness, everything, what does it have to do with pronouns? Why do we have to understand how culture views this? And this is why. Because the pronoun movement is based on a wrong understanding of reality. We don't get to pick our pronouns. Why? Because pronouns are directly connected to our gender, which our gender is merely an expression of our sex. I hope that clarifies things. Pronouns are connected to our gender, and our gender is merely an expression of our sex, and it is directly connected. You see, gender is not a spectrum. I'm not the first to say it, but I'll just say it. Gender is not a spectrum. Feelings are a spectrum. Uh-oh, this is huge. Oh my gosh. Listen to this. Gender is not a spectrum. Why? Because gender is connected to our sex. Feelings are a spectrum. Because why? Feelings are not connected to our sex. I mean, all humans, whether male or female, can experience a variety of different feelings, regardless if they're male or they're female. But your gender is directly connected with your sex. It's an expression of your sex. Thus, your pronouns must be connected to that. So if you kind of connect the train thought, if you will, your pronouns are connected to your sex. That's the way it works. Why? Because that's how it works naturally, my man. That's called biology. But as an example, we have to understand that, as we said, gender is not in the spectrum. Feelings are in a spectrum. Gender is binary. Gender is merely an expression, not of your feelings, listen to this, but of your sex. Gender is not an expression of your feelings. It is an expression of your sex that you were born with. XX or XY. Now, are there abnormalities? Of course it is. We live in the fallen world. There are abnormalities, yet language has to be descriptive of some objective reality. And this is why we have pronouns that connect to our gender, which is an expression of our sex. So ultimately, our pronouns connect with our biological sex. We don't get to choose random words to describe ourselves. Like, we don't get to choose our own adjectives, as Matt Walsh brilliantly pointed out. You can't just go, you know what? Call me jacked, bulky, and the strongest man on earth. I mean, sure, but is that true? No. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to look at me and say, Andrew, I hate to break it to you, but that's not the case. I hope all this has been making sense. So as Christians, are we not supposed to love then? No, we are supposed to love. As Christians, we're supposed to love, but the question then becomes, who gets to define what loving means? Is it culture? Is it the world? Is it loving to affirm any and all feelings that come from someone? Ask yourself this. Is it loving to affirm every single feeling that a person has as reality? No, we would not do this in any other way. We would not do this in a case of suicide, or when someone has suicidal thoughts. We would not go, hey, you know what? That is a true reality, exactly as you see it. If you don't see meaning in your life, boom, that's it. No, we would never affirm every single feeling that comes from. We would hear them, but we wouldn't affirm them and less celebrate that. You see, God gets to define what love is, not culture. 1 Corinthians 13 tells us that love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. So, no, it is not loving to affirm someone's pronouns. It's actually harmful. I'll say it again. It is not loving to affirm someone's pronouns. It's actually harmful. Why? Because you are affirming deception. And affirming deception is harmful to the person who's being deceived. It's just that simple. I know, we thought, man, what's the big deal with pronouns? 29 minutes later, or however long it's been. Yeah, it's a little bit, there could be some problems when it comes to affirming pronouns. Now, practically, how does this work? Really, it depends on your situation, but you don't have to go out of your way to offend people. And like, if you see someone who looks like a they, them, meaning they're a little bit androgynous, you don't have to go, hey, he, him, or her, she. I mean, come on, dude. Like, we're not supposed to be combative as Christians. Use their first name instead of using their pronouns if they don't align with reality. It's not about becoming pharisaical about it. We have to be, like I say, have compassion, but you can't compromise truth for compassion. So I want to just end with this thought. If you're a Christian, my friend, you cannot have your pronouns on your bio, because if you actually identify as your sex, as you should, and you have pronouns in your bio, you're supporting this nonsensical idea that's antithetical to Christianity. Now, if you're someone who does use pronouns and you identify differently, I encourage you to see the episodes called Can You Be Gay and a Christian in the Lie, the Truth About Transgenderism, or the Lie of Transgenderism, and then another episode that was right before that. I've done a lot of episodes offering hope and clarity and truth regarding this topic of gender identity when it comes to even transgenderism, gay, Christianity, homosexuality, and all of that. So I encourage you to watch it. Well, folks, that wraps up this episode. I'm super thankful for each and every one of you. We are going to be back. We wouldn't be back on a weekly basis because I do have the other podcast. However, we are going to be back more consistently. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. And make sure to share this episode with that one person that's got pronouns on their bio. All right. We'll see you. Take care. God bless.